In this presentation, you will learn about habitus. Habitus, the term, has been used in writings connected to Aristotle. However, it was Bourdieu who used it in a sociological context. In the book, The Logic of Practice, Bourdieu made a critique of structuralism from the point of view of practice and strategy, where he used the concept of habitus. For Bourdieu, an individual's instinctive knowledge of how to live in and deal with that field is what he termed habitus. Fields here refer to the different areas like religion, law, sports, etc. Habitus can also be described as a durable fluid system developed in children because of their observation and imitation. He wanted to understand how people are forced or, as he binded, by their own cultural practices. His account of how habitus is formed is a theory of socialization that combines the behaviorism of the American sociologist G. H. Mead. Habitus is one of Bourdieu's most influential concepts. It also refers to the physical forms of cultural capital, like ingrained habits, skills, and nature that we possess due to our life experiences. Bordeaux often used the example of sports when talking about habitus, and he used the term feel for the game. Just like a skilled baseball player just knows when to swing at a 95 miles per hour fastball without consciously thinking about it, each of us have an inbuilt type of feel for the social situations or games where we regularly find ourselves in. In the right situations, our habitus allows us to navigate social environments successfully. For example, if you grew up in a rough, crime ridden neighborhood of Mumbai, you would likely have the type of skill sets, smartness needed to successfully survive or deal with violence, know how to avoid police surveillance or harassment. However, if you were one of the lucky few in your neighborhood to study in a college, you would probably find that this same set of skills and habits was not useful and maybe even unfavorable to your success in your new social scenario. Habitus and choice. Habitus also extends to our taste for cultural objects such as art, food, and clothing. In one of his major works, Bourdieu links French citizens' taste in art to their social class positions. He argues that the culturally ingrained habitus shapes one's tastes. Upper class individuals, for example, have a taste for fine art because they have been constantly exposed to and trained to appreciate it since a very early age. On the other hand, working class individuals generally do not have access to high art, and thus they have not cultivated the habitus needed for appreciation of fine art. The thing about habitus, Bordeaux often noted, was that it was so ingrained that people often mistook the feel for the game as natural instead of culturally developed. This often leads to justifying social inequality because it is mistakenly believed that some people are naturally inclined to the finer things in life while others are not. It needs to be observed that through habitus, Pierre Bourdieu also tried to overcome the binary model in social theory like micro macro, material symbolic, empirical theoretical, objective subjective, public private, structure or agency. Through his work, he tried to reveal the practical logic of everyday life, understand relations of power, and develop reflexive sociology. One must also remember that gender, class, ethnicity, culture, education, and the historical period all shape an individual's habitus and practice. One's everyday life is dynamic and fluid, like a jazz musician improvising on a theme. On the other hand, practice is the result of the relationship between an individual's habitus, different forms of capital, and the field of action. Habitus can also be described as a durable fluid system developed in children because of their observation and imitation. He wanted to understand how people are forced or, as he binded, by their culture practice. His account of how the habitus is formed is a theory of socialization that combines the behavioralism of the American sociologist G.H. Mead. For Bourdieu, habitus is a conceptual framework in which there are varying degrees of explicitness of and competition among norms. Under this framework, there are three ways that people experience the norms of their social existence. They do so through a set of materially predisposed practices that express a belief about how the world works and reproduce that worldview. These predisposed practices tend to produce doxa, situations in which the natural and the social world appears as self-evident. This is habitus, the unquestioned order of things. People also experience the norms of their social existence through the contrasting situation of orthodoxy, in which social classifications become the object and instrument of struggle, and in which the arbitrariness of the current system becomes evident, and through heterodoxy, a situation of more or less equally competing possibilities. Bourdieu emphasizes the complicitous silence of community members in the continuous reproduction of the collective rhythms or habitus of the community. Habitus is the learned set of preferences or dispositions by which a person orients to the social world. It is a system of durable, transposable cognitive schemata or structures of perception, conception, and action. Habitus and practice. Habitus also takes place in an individual unconsciously. Bourdieu's theory of habitus showed that it is practice by which the mind adopts certain patterns. Practice is what humans do in their everyday lives. It is based more on improvisation rather than always governed by rules. It is kind of inbuilt in us and it generally functions when we are in different situations or spaces. For example, when you wake up in the morning, you take a toothbrush and start brushing your teeth. With time, you may try out an electronic toothbrush too. Bourdieu's emphasis on practice is not included in Marx's early writings, though Goffman uses it in his work. As researchers, we need to look into what people do and how they are told to do certain things through their culture and the gaps between these things. For him, strategies are based on an unconsciously developed practical logic which develops through interactions between habitus and the field. This is a kind of rational action theory, sometimes known as the feel for the game. In a world formed as a taken for granted principle, the way things are, a world in which definite possibilities influence the expectations formed and held by individual value systems, strategies develop and make practical sense. For example, when you need something from your boss, you are always kind to him or her in good books. So here is the strategy you are using. The importance of habit in conditioning practice is equally significant, and it develops into Bourdieu's theory through the concept of habitus. He refers to formulating integrated creative characteristics when he uses the term habitus. Criticism. Critics point out that habitus is an overly deterministic concept, limiting individual agency, innovation, and change. According to Habitus, socio-economically disadvantaged individuals are socialized into dispositions that destine them to think and act in ways that recreate the conditions of their disadvantage. Structures produce dispositions, which produce practices, which reproduce structures. However, this aspect has been criticized by many. Critiques are also related concerns that the dispositions of habitus are set early in life and largely unaltered by subsequent experiences. That habitus operates largely behind the back of the individual, leaving little room for conscious rational behavior, and that as a consequence of its immutable and pre-reflective nature, habitus leaves little purchase for individuality, innovation, and social mobility. I hope you now have a better understanding of habitus. Thank you for watching the presentation. Do like, subscribe, share, and leave your comments about this presentation or any other topics you would like to learn more about.